Day, the 5th of November. It is time for the newsroom, and we're looking at how we've covered some of those big stories, the media across the board, from radio to television, the dailies as well. And joining me in studio this morning is David Ohito, who's a digital editor here at the Standard Group. In the middle, Julie Masiga, Karibu Sana, revised editor at the Standard as well, and Patrick Gadara, who's a communications consultant. Good morning.
Good morning.
So let's begin with matters security. And again, this from one incident from this part of the country to another, we've seen what has been happening in the north. But what is worrying, as I was just saying before we came on, is that it appears to be the same old story that we are telling. Unfortunately, lives have been lost. So for these ones who've lost their loved ones, it's not an old story. It's fresh. They're suffering. They're hurting. But on the other end, you look at the security people who are supposed to be at the helm of this, and they're in twiffs. But in terms of coverage, Gadara, I'll start with you. How has the media handled this?
I think that in terms of saying what has been happening, I think that's pretty much been captured. My problem with the coverage, as always, is in the context. I'll give you an example. On Friday, just a few hours before the attacks in Kapedo, the president went for a high-level seminar on security strategy and gave a speech, that was outlining what his vision is, his take on what our security priorities should be. That's a major thing, A few hours later, big security incidents, everybody forgot the speech. Nobody's talking about it, nobody's saying, what is actually government thinking about security? So all this seems to have disappeared. So the context within which we work, and in terms of articulating, I think, an analytical framework where we can understand that these failures, what happens in Kapedo, is very much, as you were saying before, what happened in Baragoi, very much what happened in Peketoni, from reinforcements not making it there, people calling, it taking ages, and stuff. But all this are tied together so that we have an idea of a wholesome unit, that people start understanding that it's not just 22 guys being killed. There is a fundamental failure of the entire security system, and that we need to start looking for holistic solutions, not just
but I think the Standard, was it yesterday or the day before, had a front page just covering some of those hotspots. Linda, not only in that report today, but yesterday also did those linkages in terms of where else this has happened, and that it's the same story, different cast.
Yeah, I think the media has tried very hard to do exactly what you're saying, maybe not perfectly, but I think the sentiment was to get a call to action more than to analyze the entire situation and see, to put it in some kind of context. I think what was behind the coverage this time, because everybody knows it's happening and the situation is out of hand, the point was, how can we get somebody to do something? And that, I think, was the tone of the coverage, as opposed to being like a broad-ranging analysis of the thing, if you know what I mean.
If I may just jump in, I think this call to do something is one of the things I have a problem with. Everybody wants action, but nobody is defining what is the action that's actually required. So people are saying, for example, let's fire Olelenku, let's fire IG Kimayo. Quite happy, let them go. But will that solve the problem? What is the actual problem? What are the problems?
I don't think the media has called for the firing of the two, but I want to hear from you.
Lots of people have. And here's my thing.
Yes, they have.
Is you need to, we need to view this holistically. We need to be asking, for example, going back to Westgate, what happened to that inquiry?
But then when we find out what happened to the inquiry, then what happens?
But that's what the inquiry is for. The inquiry tells you what's wrong, gives you recommendations about what you can change. You don't just sit back and say, let's have action.
How often have we seen recommendations implemented in Kenya, even with land matters?
The people in government know what should happen, ideally, or should know.
So it's the media's role,
or should know.
If you actually listen to the president's speech, if you actually read it, you would be very skeptical that the people in government know what the problem is.
But as the media,
but are you suggesting the media then should be the one?
The media needs to highlight that these are the things that need to be done.
All right, let's bring bring Ohito in.
Very interesting discussion.
Yes.
Very sad. What happened in Kapedo only happens in failed states. And I think it's high time we really held people to account. If you look at the number of officers who have lost their lives in line of duty under Kimayo and Lenku, then there's something absolutely wrong. I know there has been underinvestment in terms of security dockets. I know there is the stalled police reforms which have not happened in the manner they were planned by Saitoti and company.
Recruitment as well.
Recruitment as well has proved to be the biggest scam. So I think the country is faced with a bigger problem that needs to be addressed urgently, and which is why those who clamor for the referendum are saying that we must address security. There cannot be, you know, a situation where officers are killed every day like flies and we do nothing. When a few politicians die, we see, oh, let's raise money and support these families. I have not heard a single guy say, let us support the 22 police officers who
That would be
died.
a good story to tell.
Yes, so
Why are
why
we
do
not
we
telling
have
it?
different scripts for different... Is it because they are APs, they are coming from the so-called lesser wing of the police service? No, we must be seen to be doing things in a general format, in a way that is really balanced, fair, and so on. I personally would be ready to support one of the families. There are no structures yet. So you really fail to understand what is it that is going wrong with the security docket in this country. And I think there must be time for action.
The president appeared to concede what picture this all is painting in as far as the country, in saying that it looks as if it's a lawless country where there's no government, where police officers are being killed left, right, and center. But to give a perfect example of some of those linkages, again, I'll go back to that we should be making in as far as how we treat then these families also, these soldiers. Remember in Suguta, they were, some of the soldiers were there for days, weeks before the bodies were collected. And even initially when they were collected, they were left in a truck. They were rotten. It was the smell,
I mean, do you remember in Baragoy that they sent a helicopter that broke down?
Yeah.
There. In February this year, we had a story that all 8 police helicopters were grounded. All 8. They couldn't fly anything. In fact, now they're tracking the bodies. They're not flying them in, back. They're tracking them in. Where are the helicopters? And this is my thing, is if we are serious about resolving our security issues, we've got to see it holistically as a whole failure of the system. These things, the fact that they keep repeating themselves, I mean, I sympathize and I agree with what David says about helping these families of these 22 guys, but the problem is much bigger than those 22 guys.
I think people understand that. I think Kenyans understand that the security system is breaking down or has broken down. I think we can take that as a given. But in this particular case, when this happened, in our coverage of it, it was so shocking and so disturbing to, I guess, the entire media fraternity that they just decided to shine a light on it before going behind the scenes and linking what happened before and what's going to happen in the future. In this particular case...
But here's again...
hold up. And then by looking at this now, it calls to your memory things like we have all said that have happened before.
Right.
Yeah, so in our coverage of this particular story, I am of the opinion that it was the right tone and the right approach in the sense of this is what is happening, people, pay attention.
Is the media outraged enough in terms of calling for action, as she said? Because perhaps we need to see that coverage that really, at the end of the day, everyone everywhere feels something must give, if
the
not.
media is pretty right. We've done a good job. My colleagues have done a good job. But what worries me is that there is a chopper, a good chopper, to carry the president to the scene, to a rally, rather than to carry officers to support their colleagues from being murdered. I find that really wrong priority. That we have choppers to go and drop bombs, that we don't have choppers to go and support security operations. And I'm one of those advocates who are saying it is time perhaps to devolve these security dockets, like it happens in the US, like it happens in Germany, so that we can have people who understand the area they're operating on. But if you lift a young man who has served for 6 months, has lived in Kiambu all his life, his first assignment is in Baragoi or in Kapedo, where terrain is, he is not familiar with it. Of course, we'll have to face those challenges. If you had locals who knew the terrain, who know the escape routes, you would be solving fewer problems today. But these areas that are suffering high levels of insecurity are just paying the price of marginalization over time. Why should the people in Kapedo be fighting over animals today? If we had the right infrastructure, the right investments in those places, you'd not hear of such things.
Are we also highlighting the role perhaps of these other leaders? You look at Turkana when the president went and you hear some leaders said they did not attend because they were not aware of the meeting. I mean, in terms of just looking at, fine, it is a preserve of perhaps a role of the government, but everybody surely must have their hands on deck to resolve this.
Well, yeah, I suppose so. I mean, everybody needs to be involved. I'm not going to say that just because the president turns up, every leader has to be there. They'll make their own decisions that are influenced by their politics and stuff. That's is something we have to live with. But fundamentally, the security system itself should not be subservient to the politics of those
Correct,
leaders.
yeah.
And that is the problem, one of the big problems we have. Going back to something that David said, again, this I think is illustrative of where we go wrong. It's not just any helicopter you will send to support police operations, just as not any helicopter you send to support army operations. There are specific ones, they have different capabilities, etc. So what probably flies a president is not necessarily an attack helicopter or whatever, a troop transport chopper, I don't know. But there are different capabilities, and what we should be asking is, where are these capabilities? I'll give another example. Do you remember the helicopter that was donated to the Kenyatta National Hospital in 1989 by the Germans, that then sat in a hangar for more than like almost 12 years, didn't go anywhere, hangar 27, I think, at Wilson. Nation did a story on it in 2012. Does anybody follow up? It was said, I think I read somewhere that in February it flew to Mandera and then had other problems. So this again is part of a systemic and systematic problem, and the deputy president has admitted this. And I think for as long as we choose not to see this, that's why we keep getting surprised, shocked that this happened in Kapedo, when actually it was in the making. It is the failure, and our failure to keep interrogating and asking these questions over a period of time, that allows the rot to sink in, and become established.
But I think it also shows the blot on the new intelligence boss. We thought a few things would change faster than they have happened. What happened to Kenya's beautiful intelligence over time? These are begging questions that we must really try and answer. And I think if such operations can happen in a part of the country and the intelligence is not aware, then I think we're still in a big dilemma going forward. Which investor would want to put their money in a country where security officers are shot and killed like flies? We are sending very bad signals.
Are they not aware, or do they just not care, as you said?
Sorry?
Are they not aware, or do they just not care?
We should all care. Yeah, and I'll give you one last thing. IPOA yesterday, Macharia Njeru, comes on TV and says that there's been a failure across in the police, that they have not actually implemented the law, National Police Service. Now, if you read the report that they did after Mpeketoni, a lot of the very same failures they highlighted were represented here. So,
and also Westgate.
Yeah, precisely. And they were there at Westgate. And this is my point, is let's go back, let's do in fact, the one thing I'd really love to see is a proper, comprehensive public inquiry into the entire system. What are the various facets? Right now we're dealing with it almost as if we are the blind men of Hindustan. The parliamentarians grab the tail, they say, oh, let's put up penalties for cattle rustling, you know, as if that will solve the problem. You know, other guys grab something else and say, oh, let's do this, let's do that. So there's no holistic approach to it.
But even though
Sophia, I think the other big question we must be asking is, why are these communities having arms? The answer is very straightforward, because they are under constant threat. So for somebody to sit somewhere and order that you expect them to surrender guns, I don't think they will get.
And yes, they don't feel safe.
But there are two ways to also look at it. You know, yes, there is a failure by government in these marginalized areas to provide security. But across our history, our government has been a main driver of insecurity. Sure. You know, it has attacked its own people. In fact, what's happening in Turkana now, it was, I think, in yesterday's standard, that they killed 4 kids, you know, with blizzards and stuff. That's where in the world you have an army attacking its own people. You know? Yeah. So there is a question when they deploy the KDF. You know,
which
where is the parliamentary
questioned.
approval for it? There is a law that says that they need to get parliamentary approval before they deploy it. You know, where is it? Now they say, I think I read was it the Standard of the Nation, somebody saying that they were authorized in December. You know, but if Parliament can give indefinite authorizations, then it defeats the purpose of the law. The purpose of the law is to have oversight.
Does it just appear hopeless? Because you listen to this conversation this morning and you're like, this is a state of security that is worrying, that one tends to feel that it's a matter of time before we have another. It's a question of which part of the country will it be.
Yes, it's getting to the point that it's so far away, but even in urban areas, you ask yourself, will there be a day when you'll be afraid to leave your house? I mean, when does it get too much? It's it's hard to put it into words. Yeah. It's a situation that's it's a ball that's rolling down a hill and gaining momentum as it goes, and no one is stopping it. But you ask yourself, what can we do? Gadara is saying hold a public inquiry maybe and find out where the problems are in the system. My question is, then they'll produce a report, and then that report will be put on a shelf. And then what's going to happen next?
Here's my thing. Again, the fact that they don't implement some of the reports that they have is not to say that the inquiries shouldn't be done.
No, they should.
You know, they should be. What we should be doing is putting the pressure on government to ensure these things are implemented. The pressure should come from us, should come from Parliament.
But this is what we're
everybody
doing with the
suffers.
This is what we're trying to do.
This.
I'm really against the public inquiries and whatever to try and.
Why?
Because the diagnosis of the security challenges of Kenya is in very bold black and white. We all know, even if you go to Kapedo and ask an old woman, what is the problem here? She will tell you, why are we trying to reinvent the wheel? Let us invest in security sector properly.
Invest
Let
in
us
what?
have, in terms of technology, in terms of training, in terms of
what technology do we need? How do we know that? If we can't define our problem.
They have been
how many
pretty
helicopters
well
do the
mapped
cops have? You know,
if the cops know how to protect VIPs and can do it very well, then clearly they know what security is all about. So why don't they roll
but
it
the
out?
point is, your police, and if you look at it from historical perspective, they were set up essentially to protect a few guys from the many. They are heirs of a colonial legacy.
But the point is, they know how to do it.
They know how to protect a few guys.
But they know
if there's a political rally, have you noticed? They never tell you we don't have manpower to police a political rally.
But the business of protecting is something that they're well versed with.
Everybody else. You know, historically, we have not dealt with security as if it's a public good.
I think that you're contradicting yourself. You are the one who was saying here that there was no chopper to respond to this rapid emergency situation. Now you're saying you need to do another report. Why? Why don't we just invest in the choppers?
No, listen to what I'm saying.
And move on.
As I gave you the example of the Kenya National Hospital chopper, providing a chopper is not a solution. You know, all you have is a chopper. It's got to be run. It's got to be managed. What kind of chopper is it?
But
you know, the idea, and here's my thing, the idea that expertise that we all know, you know, just go to the village and ask the people there how we run our security system, and they will know.
No, they'll tell you what the problem is.
Really, they will tell you.
So for you,
is.
Gadara, the first thing to do would be here on now,
Study.
moving forward with, in terms of security, you'd have it public inquiry.
Study the problem, define the problem, understand the issues, then do something about it.
Do you have faith in implementation?
Well, I think we can push for implementation, yes.
But that's
What would be the first thing you'd seek going forward with this situation? What for you?
I am convinced that the government or the structure knows what it takes to protect the people of Kenya. They are just not doing it. The question is why? That's what we should be pushing for. Can they do their job? We can't have existed all this time without understanding those basic tenets of state. No, because you said they can protect VIP, so they know what protecting is all about. What they need to do is protect all of us. So the question, I think, is a class issue.
Well, they've never really protected all of us, you know.
They
from
haven't,
the
but
very
they,
beginning.
but
Which
they
is what
are
she's saying.
aware
They
of how to
haven't,
do
but
it.
they know how
No,
to
this
do it.
is, again, where I have a problem. I don't think that it is
You
obvious
think they're
that they
clueless?
do.
No.
You know,
Yeah.
I don't think it is obvious that they do. I don't think it is obvious that they know, you know. And I think that even for them, it will be, I think, very good for us to come together as a country. You know,
I think I'll refer Gadara to the document. Go and just read a report on the planned comprehensive reforms in the police force or in the security sector.
What, the Ransley report?
Yes, and then that solves about 90% of the troubles there. The issues of remuneration, the issues of equipping them with the right thing, the issues of right positioning, rapid response in terms of emergency situations like what happened in Kapedo. I don't think
so it's already there. It's not been acted on. So Gadara, an inquiry then will not be anything new.
No, again, I think I fundamentally disagree. The Ransley report dealt with police, isn't it? There are very many problems that are not just restricted, again, to the police, and how we approach and define what our national security priorities are, and the sort of things that we go then and equip not just police, how we equip our army, what happens when they come across. For example, our army has a duty, as explained in the Constitution, to support police, you know, when they're deployed in. The radios the army uses and the radios the police uses don't necessarily talk together. They don't train together, they don't do etc. You know. And then also on a wider scale, you know, where security is not just about deploying cops, you know.
It's true, but in this
what are the other things that we should be doing or we could be doing that would prevent, you know, whether it's attacks on us, would mitigate them, would help us respond better to them. It's not just about police.
Before we move away from this, for you, Ohito, what would be the first thing up? He talks about an inquiry being the solution from here going forward. What for you do you think is the next course of action?
We must strengthen intelligence systems. We must try, even at county levels, to try and invest in these areas and also engage in a lot of public education, that even if we need cattle from another community, we don't need to butcher each other. These have been there historically over time. How can we mitigate against such activities, some practices which are now overtaken by time?
Nation Imbugira on Twitter says, in this Kapedo issue, no media house has pointed out the role of IEBC in determining boundaries.
The conflict of interest.
Well, we all quiet.
Yeah, I mean, and again, this is part of why I'm saying that this is multifaceted. And I think there was somebody who mentioned, I'm not sure it was the president or somebody else, who spoke about county boundaries being seen as community boundaries, you know, so that certain counties belong to certain communities, you know, which is a problem, you know. And these are all things we need to consider. You know, when we are saying let's solve the issue in Turkana, do we really understand what's driving it? You know, down there, you know, might be Turkanas are afraid of being raided. I saw the Star today is talking of, actually, it's about oil being in Turkana areas and not in Pokot areas. You know, etc. There are many interests, multifaceted. Understand the problem, then fix it.
So the media can do more, Julie, in this story.
Can
do more. There's more that we can do.
There's always more that you can do. Cover more angles, go deeper behind the story, look at historical injustices. There's always a lot more the media can do at any particular point in time, but I still believe in this particular case, they've done a lot compared to other times when things have had to be covered comprehensively. I think that they have really tried. And also in terms of the boundary thing and what you were saying about counties and communities, despite all that, if they had sent more experienced officers down there instead of rookies that was their first beat, if these people were paid better, if they had better equipment, they might have not died despite what was happening, even without understanding the context of that conflict. If they were better equipped, they might have escaped that death, and that is something that can be done without having to unpack the entire issue, if you get what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, there's always, how to put it, the piecemeal changes you could make. And I'm not against particularly
not
saying,
piecemeal, but just
don't better equip this, you know, or don't. But, I mean, I don't come across as saying that don't do anything till after you have the inquiry, you know. But have an inquiry, you know. Even as you know, you better equip your police, or you give them insurance, you know, to cover them, etc. That's fine, you know. But look at the wider issues and implement solutions that are holistic. Okay. You know, all the reports that we have from Bransri to the IPOA report and stuff, get them together.
How do you take this story forward, Ohito?
I think it's going to be challenging taking it forward, because I've said these areas suffer marginalization, and even the media has marginalized them. You remember KTN, for example, does not have resident reporters or crew in Kapedo, but because of the events, you are forced to pull crew from Nairobi and send them there, and they are there for a short time, and it happens with all other media houses. So unless there's a fresh attack, you'll see the media slowly gravitating away from that story. So I wouldn't lie that the media will give it the desired focus for enough time. It's the same thing. You were very deep in Baragoi coverage. I still remember those pictures on your reports. And once the death and the burials happened,
Came back.
yeah, we came back. So I don't think the media will do much more, but we have said that there needs to be a lot of action. There must be heads rolling. What happened to intelligence? I want to hear a statement from the new intelligence boss. He owes this country an explanation. How can he go on earning money from Kenyans, and Kenyans are being butchered like flies? He owes us an explanation.
Well said. Let's move on. Jicho Pevu, inside story, prayer predator.
That was a cracker.
You know, I sat in the house and watched it. I was like, oh my God. It was unbelievable that this man, who's now in the Daily Nation today, is unapologetic largely on what he has done. But Gadara, you seem to believe that this is not even what we should be, highlighting?
No. I think there's a lot of push on this story itself. I mean, I'm not saying that it's not a story, who? As in, like for example, yesterday when you guys wanted to have what's it called?
Betty Bayo.
Betty Bayo, and I think even your big question of the day is, should she forgive him? You know, and I was thinking, in a week where we have real proper security failures, you know, where the government is flouting the constitution by deploying the media, are these the real issues we should be following? Now, I'm not saying that
the entire bulletin should be security.
For example, I mean, I'm not saying that the story of how people are being fleeced by unscrupulous, let's call them, preachers is not one that shouldn't be done. I'm quite happy to see it done, you know. And again, my focus would be more than what's done about it. You know, why is this guy walking around?
What did you think first of the story and how it was done?
No, I thought the story was excellent, you know, apart from when they started veering off to whether his wife is going to forgive him or not. I was quite happy with the story.
That's follow-up. That is follow-up. That wasn't captured in the story. That was
that's
follow-up.
What I'm saying. I mean, the follow-up is not, I mean, that I have an issue. But the story itself, I thought was excellent. And I think it paints, I mean, it reveals an important thing about how people are being fleeced, you know. Question now is what happens, you know. This guy walks around, is speaking to press, being photographed.
The Range Rover.
Yeah. Has anybody from government you know.
But has he done anything wrong, though?
Well, yes. And
Yes.
he's defrauded people.
How has he defrauded people?
He has asked for, what's it called?
Return.
Money.
And he asked and he was given.
In return for, what's
He
it called?
stage managed miracles, so
Yeah.
he's lying
in return
to people,
for,
He's lying to
for
people,
certain
but-
services that he will provide.
which
You
they are
know,
not.
and he actually
provided.
markets it,
Is
you
he-
know, using essentially false advertising, you
Yeah.
know, where he's pretending to be
Fantastic.
having, you know, phone calls and
Mystic
stuff. We
powers.
saw it, you know.
But
I
are
mean,
you going to
seriously.
charge him because people believed him? Or
Pardon?
is,
no,
is it
no. It is how he carries it on. And again, there has to be. I mean, I would be very, very surprised if somebody were to argue, or if we were to find that he's broken no law. Because if he hasn't, then we have a bigger conversation to
So you
have
don't think he's broken
about the
any
state
law,
of our
Julian?
laws.
He's probably broken a few laws here and there, but I think the bigger issue is that
We can forgive him.
No.
I mean,
If
wasn't
I-
his mom jailed
Yeah,
for
she-
doing pretty much the
Yeah,
same thing?
and there she
She
is,
wa-
yeah.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
she was.
If she was jailed for doing the same thing, you know,
But-
then there are laws.
And he's doing
My
it at a
question
higher
is,
scale,
If he's
perhaps.
walking around now
On the
as
face
a
of
free
things,
man,
on the face of things, though, he asked for an offering, a seed or whatever, and he was given. So people were gullible enough to give him money to pay for a miracle.
well,
So why should we criminalize
again,
that?
we can't. We do criminalize con men. You know,
And
if I come
besides,
in and
go
I
to-
tell you,
go
wait,
to-
hold on. If I come in and I tell you, give me your money and I will double it, and I take off with it, you can go take me to court.
And say
you
what?
know, and
And
I
say
can
what?
be arrested, you know, for defrauding you.
Because you have used
You
a
know,
lie
just because
to
they're using the
convince
church does
me
not
different
take
from
them.
what is
I mean,
the
that
situation.
does not relieve them
My problem
of
with,
responsibility.
I know this guy is wrong, yes, but my problem with this is put on any gospel channel and there will be pastors asking for money. Very
Good.
recognized,
Yeah.
accepted pastors every single
Right.
day of the
Uh-huh.
week. In fact,
So
every hour
that's why
of
we
the day.
need a spotlight on
So
them.
what makes this man any
Yeah,
different?
no, yes, I'm saying nothing. And what we need to be asking is then, is
No,
government
what
now
makes him
looking
different
at
is
all
this.
these guys?
We don't know about these other people and what are the things they do. But in this one, and John Alanamu, Muhammad Ali did an excellent job to just piece together and back up the allegations that have been put against him, in that he'll come and say that, okay, I'm going to do this for you. And yes, you say these people are gullible in believing and going along, but he says he will do that by lying that he's been able to exorcise some demons, remove some,
And heal
what are they
Get
called?
people jobs.
The needles.
Treat HIV.
Yeah, treat HIV. So you don't know he's lying because he's done all these things behind the scenes.
Yeah, but even-
to you, it appears that it has actually happened. So he's lying.
But
So,
even though
yeah.
it did happen, how would you prove these matters of faith? How would you prove that
you
somebody
prove
was
because you're
lying?
still HIV positive.
What?
honey.
No, but
Did you actually watch the thing?
I watched it. No, I'm saying if there was a
I don't think proof is
no,
a
no, no,
problem
no, no. If
here.
there was a
Julian
true
Guevara.
miracle, if there was a true miracle, how would you prove it? This is my
Julian-
question.
Because you go
Guevara,
to
two
hospital
things.
and then you were HIV positive and now you're negative, you've proven. But
No,
if you're still
you-
positive and he said you're not...
As a person, yes, but as somebody else looking in who wants to sow 310 bob, how would I tell that the miracle was
let's
real?
hear
Let's
from
not
Mohito.
run
Yes,
away
sir.
from the
Yes.
facts. Number one, Kenya's premier pioneer private TV station, KTN, did an excellent job.
Yes.
There's no doubt about that.
Yes.
If I was the police inspector general, I would hire Alan Namu and Moha to help me with investigations because my officers are failing me every other day. Two, I am very angry at Kenyans that such a huge number of Kenyans can be swayed and be cheated so cheaply. Tells a lot about our society. Is it that Kenyans are giving up? Is it that Kenyans have become dunderheads? You can be cheated by
It's like
very...
life is hard, so
you
you're
know.
looking
Life
for
is
a
hard
way
for
out.
people.
So you can't
Yes.
really blame them on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are things we need to interrogate. For you to operate this thing, for me, it's a high-level cartel involving, including mobile telephony service providers, and I know he must be enjoying very good protection from police officers and people in government, and for you to carry on with this, begging money, stealing from people, including the poor people, and you literally say on national TV that even if I steal from you today, let me do so. You lie that you can,
Yeah, the
you
soundbite
treat
of the year.
HIV, AIDS. What message are you sending to people? I think this guy should be behind bars yesterday, not even today.
And very many pastors would be behind bars.
Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, they should be. And
Yes,
this is my
follow the
thing.
law.
Is you can't hide behind the church. You know, we shouldn't be allowing people to hide behind it, behind this thing called faith, and to essentially perpetrate scams. And that's what they're doing.
But the problem
You
is
know.
that they have such large followings. 80%.
It doesn't matter. If you break the law, you break the law.
No,
It doesn't
so the
matter if you
problem-
have 100 million guys.
No, the
following you.
problem is they have such fertile ground with which to sow their seed. I mean, there are so many people who believe in them.
Yeah, but what you
Human beings
So the
easily
problem
gravitate
is
towards
actually
the
us.
spiritual.
Well,
and
yeah,
the-
but what you seem to be saying is that because they are so successful at
No,
calling people,
no, I'm
that
just saying
somehow they
the-
shouldn't be held to account.
The issue is us.
You know.
There are
It's
those who
actually
try
us
to
more than
discredit
them, yeah.
Moha and on this particular
No,
story.
no,
What did
no,
you think of
just
that? Some of the responses that came through.
We must credit Moha and Alanamu and the cameraman who we always don't mention, and the good editors who went through the piecing the final
Story
package
together.
together. Those guys did a good job, and I think for me that is the best journalism that we should be teaching in J schools, that we should be teaching new people in newsrooms. And KTN set the agenda. If you see key rival media houses running to the story like bees, then it tells you KTN continues to set the agenda, which means there's something unique about the Standard Group, and we must be singing about it.
True.
Yes. It's very rare to
Then how did you see the tweets that trying to
take the
discredit the
story and put it
report?
on your page one.
Well, I didn't see the ones that tried to discredit it. I wasn't much online yesterday, but I go back and say that I think the focus should now move towards what is actually being done in terms of scrutiny of operations of essentially preachers, you know, and in as much as the media likes, is patting itself in the back, or KTN is, you've got to ask, how do you enable this when you have these guys on your platforms, you know, selling these claims, you know? So I think the
so
media
the
has
media
to
as well has a
also
role.
examine itself,
Yeah,
you know,
that's true.
here
Yeah, because
and
of a
ask
radio
what is it
station. What
for
was that radio
and
station?
this.
That aired his...
Yeah, I think you were said to have two TV whatevers. I'm not sure
I
which
don't
stations.
remember.
You know,
But that's true.
2 TV shows and things. So the press itself has to ask, and I think
Good
these are
point,
the sort
yeah.
of things then that the people like the Media Council, alongside the editors and other media practitioners, can sit down and try and come up with certain standards, if
Yeah,
you will.
guidelines.
I think the
That
guidelines and
prevent
standards are there
this.
pretty much even at KTN. There's so much paperwork you go through, rules and regulations on what you should do. But I'm particularly concerned that when somebody is going to take national airtime or space in newspapers and claim I can treat HIV against all scientific methods available, I think for me that's a big lie and sending a very wrong signal.
Yeah.
So
We
perhaps the
cannot
media
allow
should
that.
not entertain,
No.
shouldn't give them
So
a
there
platform.
is a responsibility
Yeah.
on the
Yeah.
media as well in who's
Yes.
using our
Those
platforms.
in charge of programs, those in charge of content going on your platform must scrutinize that content. The only challenge I have is that some of the content comes on air live, so it's very
You can't
difficult
control
to
it.
control while on air. But we
Well, you
certainly
can have
must not.
delays and stuff. I mean, there are technical ways of, I think, dealing with that. But I think also media needs to put the spotlight on government and asking how are these people actually regulated. You know, when they go and they buy, like as he did, he
because
takes
no
7
returns
million
have
and he
been
says,
filed.
This is for the church. Who is this church that owns
But
it?
then how?
Yeah, I'm
how
also
far
waiting
can
for
that go?
a statement from
Precisely.
Ministry of
You know,
Health.
so there should be a spotlight on how these churches and these preachers are actually regulated. You know, what are the sort of laws that govern them, and do we need changes to the law in this case? You know, does it highlight perhaps lacunas, perhaps problems that we have? You know, the other issue, I think, again, they pointed out how he's not been filing any of his returns for his company. So again, what is KRA doing?
I told you it's very clear there is protection of such people, with very
It's
high
not the
placed
story.
people in government and in the relevant offices. I'm waiting to hear what the Ministry of Health is saying about a guy who lies in media platforms that I can treat HIV. I mean, Macharia owes us an explanation.
Now that to me is a much
other
better
people
story
in
than whether
recent
his
times.
wife is going to forgive him.
So why are you against this story of the wife? I'd want to know.
I want to know.
No, wouldn't you
In
want
fact,
to
I
know?
waited till the end of the bulletin last night and I was very disappointed.
When she didn't
She
show.
didn't come on, yeah.
Yeah, I think everyone wants
It's
to
a
know.
point of-
Ganara, you're
no,
being too
taking the story
rigid on
further.
this one.
No, it's
Everyone
not
wants to
actually
know.
it's more the titillating bit.
But it's newsworthy.
And I think
You think we're
the
focusing
more
on the side
newsworthy
shows?
bits and the more important stuff, you know.
Why does it have to
is
be
more
important? Why
how-
can't it just be interesting? We just want to know.
Gadara sees life in this way.
No,
There's just one way.
If you're pushing, and again, don't forget, you are the guys who are pushing this. You
We're
know.
not pushing it, but just
You-
presenting
No,
it.
no,
and
no,
it's
you
being
cannot say
No, no,
pushing what, Gadara, pushing what.
I mean, like
We've
this
highlighted
Betty
the
Bio
problem.
thing.
Look, for the last,
You know,
ever since the
it's
Capedo thing
all
happened,
been
we've
like
been pushing
out
that.
there. You
too.
guys, in fact, for quite a long time yesterday, you know, I was watching the news, you know, and she's coming. This is going to be. It was your big question of the thing. As I said before about the nation tweeting that actually she's coming on the trend and it.
Yeah, and I think, you know, if she
you're
met-
pushing that angle. You know, my thing is who is pushing the angle of government? You know, who is pushing the angle of what the media should do? And these to me are much more important, you know, than whether or not
I
his
think that
family
was just
situation
that was a light
changes.
note. Just to,
Don't you want to know? Wouldn't you want to watch an interview with Betty Bio?
Oh, yes, definitely.
for sure. As a point of
Gadara will
interest.
be waiting for the one with the government
I won't be
officials.
watching, I think I
That's,
can be guaranteed
Sophia,
that.
you've set the agenda. We are very proud of KTN. We
Yeah,
expect
Daily
more
Nation
from you.
picking it up,
Yeah.
going strong, but at least also just crediting, of course they had to,
KTN.
KTN in so doing. So we'll wait to see how this story goes. But as you said, Gadara, very important that perhaps that's an angle we need to explore. What about the government? Yes, there's a report, I think it was Sharon who did that story, asking what legal recourse can be sought, what can be done. So I guess one of those things we wait
Yeah, I
to
mean,
see.
the actual legal regime, I mean, I'd really be interested to hear
Yeah.
what legal regime do these guys actually operate under. You
I
know.
don't think they operate under any, actually.
Well, I mean, they're
fairly
registered,
regulated.
the churches are, so the laws, some of the laws
Faith
are there,
institutions.
perhaps they need to be added to or
Yeah.
changed and stuff.
They're registered,
but
yes,
we
but
need
are they regulated?
to look at the, you know.
Yeah.
Regulation is a
at
difficult
that.
part because when in the report, Bishop, I think it was Ginde, he was saying that's where it becomes
A bit
tricky.
the grey
yeah,
area,
it's
yeah.
a grey area because how then do you say, oh, we need to wear your miracles on whether they're godly or not, you know, are these from the Lord or are this, so
That's the
it's
thing.
a
It's
tricky.
how do you
Yeah,
end
but I
as
mean,
much as
those
the
are,
same?
again, if we approach the problem, then we can
One,
find
it's been
solutions
proven, I
to
guess,
it.
then it's different. I
You
mean, when you
know.
have evidence to show
Yeah,
that
but
this
I mean, there are laws against fraud, for example, and where it is obvious that
Yeah.
fraud has been happening, you know, then I don't see a problem
but
with
how far
prosecuting
can the
that. And the
state-
fact that his mom was prosecuted
Shows that
you
it's
know,
possible.
shows that it is possible to go after. The other bigger question, I think, would be how widespread is this? Across all the guys we see on our Sunday church.
Okay.
I mean, our Sunday TV shows and everything.
Yeah.
You know, if it's happening here, then it's more likely happening
Actually,
elsewhere.
one
you
other
know.
pastor tweeted in support of him, a very
Oh.
well-known pastor.
which one?
I'm not sure I should say his name,
No,
but
don't.
he did tweet about it yesterday, and then he took down the tweet, but somebody got a screenshot.
Okay, what did he say?
He said that while haters are hating,
Oh, that.
that's
Okay.
yeah.
Well, that could, was it in support or was it
It-
because perhaps there was some hate coming towards him because of what others would say?
perceive that perhaps
Yeah.
he does something similar. I don't know, but it came in close proximity, so
Yeah, interesting. So let's, before we move on to politics, Ahmed Nasir Lenku Twitter war over land goes viral.